Hey class, this is COMM 330, Communication and Technology. My name is Dr. Wes Fondren, and I want to welcome you here on the first day. Thought we'd start things off with a video because that would probably be easier than reading a bunch of stuff. I'm imagining that most of you are tired like I am from the spring. And so I'm going to tell you a bunch of stuff in this video, and you're going to need to take notes. There's 7 things that I'm going to tell you in this video that you need to do. And so if you want to pause it right now and go get a pen or something to write on, that would be great. And I'm going to go ahead and dive in and tell you those 7 things. The first thing that you need to know is that I want you to send me a video or a write-up. You can pick whichever one you want. In Moodle, where you saw this video at, below there's a place to submit something. You can submit a video, you can submit a written form of this, but I'm going to need 7 pieces of information from you. And the reason I need those is because of one of my mentors, a guy named Dr. Philip Bishop. He wrote a book on teaching that had a big impact on my life, and the very first chapter was called Know Your Students. And one of the arguments that Dr. Bishop makes is that the more we know our students and know about our students, the better we can be as teachers. And if you think about the people in your life that you learn the most from, maybe your parents or family members or best friends or that sort of thing, they're the people that know you the best. And what he says is those things are not unrelated. And if you've ever taken a communication theory class in Aristotle or uncertainty reduction or something, you know why that's the case. But the more I know about you, the better job I can do. And it's hard to do in an all digital format. And so a video would be great if you could do that, or even a voice recording if you want to do a voice recording and upload that. But I will accept typing in case your phone doesn't have a camera working or something. But anyway, I want to know some stuff about you. But Dr. Bishop's second chapter is called Know Your Teacher, and he makes an argument that the teachers that have the greatest impact on us are the ones that we know what their credibility is. We know about them and what they've done, and we know enough to know whether we can trust this person or how to listen to them and this sort of thing. And again, if you think about your family and your friends, the people you've learned the most from, you probably know them the best as well. And so these two things go together hand in hand. The teacher that knows the student and the student that knows the teacher. And I suspect that many of you in high school had a teacher that really had an impact on you, and they probably knew you better than your other teachers, and vice versa. You probably knew them better. So we're going to take a few minutes today on the first day. This is your only assignment for the first day, is to do the 7 things that I'm about to give you in a video or recording or written. So here we go. The first thing I want to know is where you're from. And you may be from lots of different cities and that stuff. Just tell me the one that you'd like for me to know, or tell me about where you came when you came from before Coastal. If you came from Myrtle Beach, tell me the high school you went to, so I know a little bit about what part of town you're from and your kind of life experience. I am from Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I wasn't born there, but about 3 months into my life, my parents moved there, and I lived there for 38 years until I moved to Myrtle Beach. And if you know anything about Tuscaloosa, Alabama, it's probably that it's the home of the University of Alabama. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute, and you'll see. But I want you to send me the first item you need to tell me is where you're from. The second item I want to know is your major and minor. I suspect most of you are communication majors, but sometimes I get people that aren't. But I also want to know your minor. I mean, if you don't have a minor, that's okay. The next question is going to help me know a little bit more about you in that area. And I also want to know what year in school you are. I suspect most of you are juniors or seniors, but let me know. That'd be helpful as well. The third, so just to review, where you're from, your major, minor, and year in school. And the third thing is your career. I want to know what you'd like to do when you graduate. And more than that, I want to know what you want to do with your life. And I'll go ahead and tell you, I was 28 before I knew what I wanted to do, and saying I don't know sometimes is the best answer. And I just sort of left my hands open for years and years and years. I got an undergraduate degree, and I was halfway through a graduate degree when I figured out what I wanted to do for a living. And so it's completely legit if you say, I have no idea. Matter of fact, it's one of the hardest things about going to college is that the time in life you know some of the least about yourself and the world and those sorts of things. You have to decide what you want to do for a living. Or people tell you that you don't actually have to, which is one of the beautiful things about a communication degree, is that it bends lots of different directions and you can do enormous amounts of things with it. So what you'd like to do. I told you I was 28 before I figured out what I wanted to do. So let me tell you a little bit about how I got here to Coastal. So none of my family went to college, and so I never thought I was going to go to college. And when I was my senior year in high school, this girl I was dating wanted me to take the ACT with her because she didn't want to go by herself. She paid my way. I took it. Somehow, miraculously, I scored well enough to get into college. And back then, a lot of the universities would just send you an automated letter if you had listed them. And the only university I listed was Alabama because that was the only one that I actually knew anything about, my hometown. And so they sent me an acceptance letter. I was shocked. I didn't actually apply. And so I took it to my dad, and he said, if you want to give it a try, I'll pay for half and you pay for half. And so anyway, I went off to college, half-heartedly, not really interested, just kind of wanted to see what it was about, and I failed out. At the end of my first year, I had a 1.0 grade point average, and so I dropped out of school and thought, I'll go work in a factory like my dad and my grandfather and all my uncles, and that was what I did. I got a job working in a factory. And matter of fact, my family threw a party for me because it was like a career factory job. Like all of them, all of them had gotten a factory job in their 20s and 30s and worked it to retirement, and they thought that's what I was going to do. Anyway, one night I went in to get behind my machine, and the day shift guy was leaving. I was the 3 to 11 shift, and we spoke for just a moment, and he left. And when I went to step up behind the machine in a factory, they're concrete floors in factories because they bolt the machines down into the concrete. And so they had given us like one of those gray rubber mats like you see cashiers standing on. And it was behind our machine, and I went to go step on that mat, and when I looked down, I saw 2 grooves in the rubber mat that he and I had rubbed into it. And for whatever reason, that night, it took my breath away. And I remember leaning back against the railing of the machine and thinking, I don't want the legacy of my life to be 2 grooves in a rubber mat. And so, of course, then I had 8 hours to stand in those grooves. And so night after night, I thought about that, and I committed to going back to school. And so I did, but I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life, and so I just took classes that interested me. And eventually, my advisor told me I had too many hours, I needed to graduate, and I had more hours in psychology than anything else. And so I have an undergraduate degree in psychology from the University of Alabama with no direction what in the world I was going to do with it. I had volunteered a lot at my church at the time, and the pastor thought I would be good at that and recommended maybe I consider that. I was starting to enjoy school, which was odd to me, and so I did. And so I got a master's degree in divinity, which is the degree you get if you want to be a pastor. And I never felt any kind of calling to be a full-time pastor. I thought for a while I wanted to maybe be a counselor, and they had counseling classes. And then I realized I liked talking too much, and that listening was very, very hard for me for multiple hours. And so I was getting a degree in divinity. It's a 4-year master's degree, and after the 3rd year, the public speaking teacher asked me if I wanted to teach a class. And I'd never taught a class before. To make a long story a little bit shorter, I agreed to do it. And September 8th, 1998, at 3 o'clock in the afternoon in room 301 in Beeson Hall, I taught my first class. And I knew that day that I was supposed to teach, that was what I was born to do, was be a teacher. And the best analogy I can give you is if, like, when you were a little kid, your parents forgot to name you, and you spent your whole life going by, hey you, or hey girl, or hey boy, or hey, come here, son, or whatever. And then one day you're 28 years old, you're in a crowded room, and somebody calls your name. And if you can imagine that feeling of hearing your name through all the noise at a party and a crowd, that kind of stuff, the way that your name, it kind of cuts through the noise and something inside you perks up and says, oh, somebody called me over there. That was what happened for me that day when I taught. It was the first time, it was like someone said teacher, and my heart or psyche or whatever said, oh, that's you. And then I spent the next 10 years trying to make enough money to go back to school, and I ended up, one job led to another, and I ended up being in computers, and I ended up being the chief technology officer for a very large company, which was a fantastic job. I had my own airplane, my own pilot because I don't fly. I had 1,000 computers I was responsible for and 5 data centers, and an unlimited expense account, and I traveled a ton, and it was a wonderful, wonderful job. But I did not want to trade the days of my life for fixing computers and making businesses run better. I wanted to teach. And so when I was in my mid 30s, I went back, and maybe in the next week or so, I'll tell you the story of how I ended back up at the University of Alabama. My undergraduate's Alabama, psychology with a minor in English. My master's degree is in divinity from Stanford University. And then my PhD is in my hometown again, it's from Alabama. And I have a dual PhD. It's in communication and information science, is what the PhD is in. But half of my course load, we call it a cognate, is cognitive psychology, which will come out a little bit in this class because psychology, or how the brain works, is something I'm fascinated by, especially as it relates to technology and communication. And so now what you know is that I have a PhD in communication I started learning about heavily when I was in my late 20s with my master's degree. I spent about a decade in the technology industry, and I did all sorts of levels from sysadmin to programming to all sorts of stuff. And so I have this sort of dual experience career-wise in communication and technology, and that's going to come out in this class. Now, before anybody panics that we're going to be coding or doing something like that, that's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in understanding how technology and communication interact. And it'll make more sense tomorrow and the next day. We're not going to dive into any kind of coding or probably even any computer kind of stuff. We're going to think about technology as a concept and communication as a concept and put those two things together. So I'm asking you, the third thing on the list is to tell me about your career, what you'd like to do. And even if you don't know what job you'd like to have, if you know some things about your career or your life goals that you know, like I know I want to travel, or I know I want to work with sustainability or whatever. If you'll tell me that, it's helpful. It really helps me when I think about examples to use in class if I know that you really care about doing something in sports, or you want to do PR, or you want to do journalism, or you want to change the world, or whatever. It helps me, and so that would be great to know. The next thing is, and this really starts helping me learn about who you are, I want to know some things that are favorites of yours. And it can be your favorite food, it could be your favorite sports team, it could be your favorite music, favorite movie, favorite band, favorite color. I don't care, just a few things of yours that are a favorite. One of the things I know from studying memory is that the more unique things you know about a person, or specific things, the easier it is to get to learn about who they are and kind of have a special spot in your brain for them. And so tell me some things that are favorites of yours, some things that are favorites of mine. I will stop here for just a moment and show you. One of my favorite things is coffee. You will see me probably drink lots of coffee in the videos that I'll post for this class. One of my other favorite things, let's see, let me get this, is the University of Alabama. And I love college football. Of course, my two teams are Alabama and Coastal Carolina. I adore college football. I love it a lot. My most favorite thing on the planet are my 4 kids. I have 2 older girls and 2 younger boys. They range from 21 to 13. And you'll hear lots of stories about them probably this semester. I love telling stories about them. And so those are some of my favorite things, not all of them. My favorite food, my favorite team, my favorite people. I guess that's it. Okay. So that's number 4, favorite. So we've got hometown or where you're from. We've got major, minor, year in school, career, what you'd like to do, and something that's a favorite of yours, or some things that are favorites of yours. And then number 5, if you can think of it, and don't stress about this. I would like to know something that's unique about you. Now, it doesn't have to be the most unique thing in the world. It doesn't have to be some shocking thing. It could just be something that's slightly different from you than the average person, or something that you feel like makes you not average, or maybe somebody you've met or something that you've done that sticks out in your memory that you don't mind me associating with you. And again, this just helps me memory-wise start to learn about you. Something unique about me, I have had a beard since 1991. And so I think about shaving it periodically, but I'm pretty attached to it. And so that's something pretty unique. I think that's it. I'm gonna try to shorten this video up a little bit. So the other thing I need to know from you, that's number 5, something unique about you. The other thing I need to know is whether you have access to Netflix. I love movies. I love television shows, and there's some things that I would like for you to be able to watch instead of reading. And so if you have access to Netflix, let me know that in your video or recording or your typing. If you don't, that's okay. That's fine. I just would love to do some video stuff instead of reading. And then the last thing, number 7, is anything that you feel like I need to know about you. No one's going to watch this video but me. And so if you have any accommodations or you have something going on in your life right now that may affect the class, or just any piece of information that you feel like it would be great if Dr. Fondren knew about this at the beginning of the semester rather than the middle, or just even if it's something that there's no reason for me to know it, but you want to tell me, that's great. It just helps me go ahead and start learning about you. Remember those 2 chapters, know your student, know your teacher. So that's my goal, is for you to know some things about me. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted you to know about me. I'm moving. I'll be moving during the semester. Matter of fact, I'll be recording from different locations, and so you'll see a different background in some of these. And so I'm moving to the beach from Carolina Forest. Trying to think what else. I can't think of anything else that I really want you to know. I was born in a missile base, one of the largest missile bases in the world. My dad was in the Air Force. In fact, hold on a second. I was born at White Sands Missile Base, and I went there, took my dad there for his 70th birthday, and this is closed up, and I got some sand. So that's sand from where I was born. And I can't think of anything else that I want you to know about me. This is the end of my 13th year at Coastal. I was the department chair for 3 years and just rotated off a couple of years ago, and right before the pandemic. And I think that's about it. And so go ahead before class on Tuesday, or before 8 o'clock Tuesday morning, go ahead and post in Moodle your 7 things. And so just to review, where you're from, major, minor, year in school, your career, what you'd like to do. Any details about that would be extremely helpful. Some things that are favorites of yours, something unique about you, whether you have access to Netflix or not, and will through the semester, and anything else that you'd like for me to know about you that is important. And I will look forward to watching your videos, listening to your recordings, or reading your text.